Right. Welcome to episode 84 of The Bar is Ankle High. My name is
Welcome.
Katie,
I'm Garrett.
and this is your weekly ADHD podcast that explores life's slow bars with wit and wisdom. This week, I wanted to talk about masking.
Oh, good idea.
And next week, I want to talk about reasonable accommodations at work.
Love that. Yeah.
I actually have a plan.
I love it. I love it.
So masking, if you don't know, is before we
I was
start,
just
any
about to stop you.
housekeeping?
I do not have any housekeeping.
Me neither. Just join our Patreon. It's at
Join our Patreon
patreon.com/thebarisAnkleHigh.
and follow us on Instagram
Yeah, at
and
the
leave
bar is
us a
ankle high.
5-star review, but we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah. Do all of those things while you listen. Just multitask,
Yes.
We're so good at that with ATD.
You better start multitasking right now.
So if you don't know, masking is, at least in the context of ADHD, is when a person with ADHD acts in a quote socially acceptable unquote way to fit in and form better connections with those around them. Masking is when you intentionally shift your behavior to hide your differences and is considered a survival strategy.
It's like code switching.
Yeah, like you kind of are asking yourself, what would a normal, quote, normal person do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And involves camouflaging your symptoms by controlling your impulses, rehearsing responses to certain situations, and copying the behaviors of those around you who don't have ADHD. When it comes to being in the workforce, masking is a survival strategy that neurodivergent individuals use to navigate and thrive in a workforce not designed for them, which then can lead to severe burnout, severe fatigue, and feelings of self-deprecation, which then goes into like the imposter syndrome stuff that we deal with, and all that. But even like if you're just masking at work, it can still cause burnout in other areas of your life. So then
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like so many things that we talk about, it just becomes this like self-fulfilling prophecy where you just can't get ahead in any area of your life. So examples of this, of masking when you have ADHD, can be coming up with excuses for being late or distracted, putting in twice the amount of effort and time that others do to achieve a goal, which is like, I feel like just ADHD.
Uh-huh.
Working extra hard to complete tasks right before the deadline, checking your work multiple times before submission, focusing intensively during a conversation in order to keep up and to not like get distracted or zone out, being extra early to events to avoid being late, having multiple alarms and reminders set up for a single event.
Okay.
Direct hit.
Oh no.
And writing everything down.
Oh no.
You sunk my battleship. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that's especially for an inattentive type ADHD. For hyperactive type ADHD, where you might fidget or talk excessively, have trouble waiting your turn. Examples of masking could be staying silent in conversations or being extra cautious with your words, suppressing your energy in order to look calm, suppressing your urges to fidget or stim, and bottling up strong emotions, which of course then can lead to those emotions overflowing
Mm-hmm.
at a good time or a bad time. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Masking is also especially common for people who were late diagnosed or who were, for whatever reason, made to feel like the way that our brain works is bad or, quote, less than
Uh-huh.
our peers. How are you feeling? Bad.
Pretty attacked. Pretty attacked.
Yeah. I find that when I'm getting burnt out, like now especially, you know, 2 years out of being diagnosed, it's, um it's the kind of thing that when I'm feeling myself get burnt out, I will stop and ask if I'm giving myself space to have ADHD, because usually it's a masking thing that is wearing me out.
Oh, interesting. I think that this is going to be interesting because I think that there's a lot of times where I'm doing it and I don't realize I'm doing it.
Mhm. Oh, for sure. And I think especially because we're late diagnosed and being late diagnosed women and AFABs, there's such an intense pressure to just, I think as women in general, to behave a certain way.
Yep.
Then when you add in the ADHD factor, it like it's like tenfold, I think.
Yeah.
Like the pressure to sit still and look pretty and behave a certain way and take notes. And there was an article I was reading about how women's roles in the office often get defaulted into things that aren't necessarily your job description. For example, perhaps a male coworker will pull you from your desk and expect you to write on a dry erase board for them while
I'm
he
really happy you brought that
dictates.
up. Um, were you there that day when that happened?
I think so.
I just like a quick recap, had a older male coworker who I'm trying to remember if he was my supervisor at that point.
I don't think he was.
I don't remember if he was directly above me or not. Um, but came over while I was working and asked me to write something on a dry erase board and handed me a marker.
Because what happened, I was there because he came over and he's like, "Hey, Garrett, can you come with me? I need your help on this project," or something.
Yeah.
Like he billed it as like
And I
needed.
right. And I had
Yeah.
learned enough from working with this person to ask details before I ran into the situation because for some people, everything's an emergency.
Mhm.
And I asked a couple clarifying questions and realized that the reason I was urgently being pulled away from my desk was to write on the dry erase board because his handwriting was messy and he didn't want to do it. And I said, that is not my job. And no, I will not do that. And sat back down and continued what I was doing.
Mhm.
And am shook at the balls that I had without thinking about it. Just absolutely not. I'm not doing that. That's not my job. Um,
I'm
but
so proud of you.
you know what? I am kind of proud of past version of me too. Yeah,
You
that
should
was
be because
it
yeah.
happened a lot. It was somebody who was always doing that. Always doing that.
And this person also said to me at some point basically that our pay grades at work, because we are union, um equate like basically he was saying it should be like similar to the military, where if somebody is a higher grade than you and they ask you to do something, you do it. And he
Right.
said that to me and I said, "This isn't the military. That doesn't make sense." And he kind of like stopped and I think he thought that like we were bonding over, and to an extent we were bonding over another employee who was a mess. Um but it was his comment where I was like, "Nope, nope, not that. That's not a thing." Um, so this person also got very mad that he dressed like you one day. So
Guys, we were wearing the same exact outfit.
it was pretty funny.
It was the same exact outfit.
He wasn't in skinny jeans, but other than that, you're in the same outfit. And he was pissed. He was so mad.
And the problem was I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, because and it was like it was truly out of The Office when Michael wears the women's suit and then like gets called out on it and is pissed.
Mysterious.
Michael, there's no pockets.
Oh my god, why are the buttons on that side? It was so funny. Um, but yeah, it's, I think now that you're mentioning it, I'm, like, really thinking about times I can think about times where I've been running, like, literally 2 or 3 minutes late to work. Because 'cause I'm not one of those super I know Katie's always early. I'm not a super early person. I'm usually a squeaking in at just the right time person, but never, like, super late.
Mhm.
If I'm late, I'm, like, 5 minutes late. I'm usually not anything more than that unless there's something, like, crazy that happens. But I can remember so many mornings driving to work at all of these different jobs I've had and having left like just a couple of minutes late, knowing I'm just going to squeak in right on time and being prepared with an excuse,
Mhm.
coming up with one on the okay, like I can just say that, that there was, and it's not like in an effort to be like dishonest. It's
It's like the fear of getting in trouble for doing something
right.
that quote like, for whatever reason, you feel like you're not supposed to do.
Well, and it's, in the grand scheme of things, is 2 minutes gonna make or break any routine? Like,
No.
no. And it's not like having ADHD and having, a morning routine. I have a very hard time with, like, getting kind of overwhelmed in the morning. So I
Mhm.
really have to make sure I have things, like, very prepared and it can be as smooth as possible, because I can very quickly just get, like, way chaotic.
Mhm.
The fact that I don't habitually run late, I think is surprising considering the ADHD, because I think it is very easy to do, losing track of time.
Mhm.
But I'm also squeaking out right on time when I have an alarm that I set for like an hour before I have to leave for work that I snooze and it goes off every 9 minutes to keep me on my morning routine. So that's why as you're saying that you're like multiple alarms, and I was like, you mean like one every 9 minutes?
For example. No one I know has ever done
Hypothetically.
that. Um, ugh.
Those are the 2 biggest ones I can, like, right off the bat. As you're reading things off, I was like, "Oh, shit."
Well, and like you said, I am always very early.
Yeah.
Um, so and my mom was always like that. My mom definitely has ADHD, but, like, I am always extremely early. So even now, those points where for whatever reason I'm leaving a couple minutes later, uh, I whatever, took too long doing something, needed to put my lunch together.
If
I'm
Katie's
leaving
not 15 minutes early, I'm usually afraid that something happened.
but so the thing is though, with my morning commute, I go into work to start work at 7:30. That time means that if I leave my house 3 minutes later, I'm stuck behind a school bus.
Mhm.
And then I have to wait for the school bus to make all of its stops and then turn. So, like, it ends up making me more than just 3 minutes later than I would normally would be.
Right.
And then even though I'm still gonna be early or on time, and also nobody gives a shit at my job because we have flex scheduling, but even then, I find myself doing the same thing in the car being like, "Okay, I just have to, like, make sure that they know." Like, the other day, I got stuck behind a fucking street sweeper. We have had torrential rain for almost an entire week straight, and there was a street sweeper out. Like, are you kidding me? But whatever. So I'm stuck behind it, and then a fire truck had to go by, so it was like a whole thing. Like, it was just insane.
But in your head, you're like, "Okay, so this
Right,
happened and then
exactly.
this happened."
And
Yeah.
it's also that thing where I'm like, well, and I have to make sure that I remember what happened because it's so easy for me to forget what the fuck I did 15 minutes ago.
Yes.
So, yeah, like there is an element of it that is it's so second nature to come up with these like workaround plans, but it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's
It's
so
exhausting. I
tiring.
had somebody one time be like, I said, "Oh, such a," like, I was explaining something, and I said, "Oh, I go that way, but, if I leave, like, 2 minutes late, I get stuck behind a bus,
Mhm.
and then I'm late getting here." And the guy was like, "So just leave earlier."
Okay.
And I kind of
I'll take
laughed.
that under advisement.
Yeah, like, I laughed when he said that, like, obviously, yes, I know that that's the solution, but w w
Go fuck yourself. Like I don't it's
yeah.
the kind of thing like just leave earlier. Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Or somebody said to
Like
me, "Just get gas on your way in the morning." You want me to, like, get out the door 15 minutes earlier than I already do, which for the record, like, when you're going into work at 7:30, which I was, um, I had to leave my house, like, by 7
yes.
o'clock.
Yeah.
So, you want me to leave at 6:45 in the morning? That's not my wheelhouse, buddy.
Mm-mm.
Like,
I do this
I'm
cool thing with my car where I just let it get down to the low fuel light.
no.
Not for any reason other than, like, it tells me the mileage and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I've got, like, 60 miles, I'm good." And, like, where like, 60 miles is not where the, like, fuel gauge thing should be. Like, it's the fuel gauge is showing more to me, more than 60 miles of range. Like, it's too high. Like, it needs to artificially lower itself so that I
Mhm,
take it more seriously before that light goes on.
mhm.
The problem is that I'm looking at that and saying, like, "Oh, I've got plenty of time." And so it's become a thing now that every time we, like, get in my car to go somewhere, PK and I, usually he'll drive, because I don't wanna, and, we'll get in and the low fuel light immediately turns on. So we got in the car last night to go out to dinner, and he was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" First thing he said when he turned it on. I
We've had
was like, "Oh, yeah, I
conversations
totally forgot about that."
that Katie and my spouse have a lot of overlap. My spouse is notorious for taking my car someplace, and me, I get in my car, the next day or whatever, and it's like I'm on fumes. My personal thing is, like, if I'm low and I need gas, I have to do it on my way home because
Mhm.
I know I don't leave early enough for whatever I have to be at to possibly ever have time to get gas on the way there. So I have to get it on my way home. That's like that I make myself do that.
I hate getting it on my way home. I'm just so tired.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like it, but I make myself do it because otherwise I'll be on fumes, I'll be
It's a
late,
little bit more reasonable than my policy of
it'll
just
be a chain
whenever.
reaction. You also can manage to leave earlier than you need to though.
That's
I
true.
cannot. Shan't, won't, tried, can't do it. Not super late, but certainly won't be early.
Um, yeah, so anyway, all of those things can lead to getting burned out really much
Turns out
faster.
there's some masking happening.
A bit. Consequences of masking can include developing depression or anxiety or experiencing worse depression or anxiety than you would otherwise have,
Oh my god.
having perfectionist tendencies,
Oh god.
having lower self-esteem,
God,
having
we haven't been
difficulty.
attacked in a while. It's
I
it's been a
know.
while since we've had one of these. Shit.
Having difficulty discerning what's genuine and what's an act, which can cause problems with romantic relationships and friendships. Man, you guys got to subscribe to Patreon because Garrett's faces in this episode are
Wow.
wild.
I'm just wow. Mhm.
Delay, and it can cause, of course, delayed diagnosis of ADHD, but also other mental health and physical health conditions because masking becomes an ingrained habit. So you can say, I have a really high pain tolerance because I just pretend like I'm not in pain from my endometriosis or fibromyalgia or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or any other number of things that you might be
Yeah.
struggling with. Um, so yeah. Um, so one of the articles that I read about this said, a suggestion for working on how to unmask, um, is to, rather than unveiling your true persona in every situation, decide who you feel comfortable unmasking for, and then develop like a gradual plan to unmask like throughout your life. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. Um, I understand the starting point where it's like, okay, when I'm at home, I'm not going to I'm going to use paper plates and disposable utensils because I have a really hard time staying on top of dishes. So like having that as like your at home thing and like getting more comfortable with that. I don't know. I guess it I'm also at the point just like age wise where I'm like, no, this is like the way I need to do things. So
Yes.
like I'm comfortable saying to like my supervisor, I learn better when I can actually follow along and do something myself and like physically do the task that you need me to do.
Yeah.
You can tell me about it all day, but until I'm doing it myself, I'm not going to have questions about this process and I'm not going to remember how to do it. So, that's what works better for me. I understand that that doesn't work better for everybody, and it's not ideal in, like, a group training setting, but, like, just so you're aware, that's what works best for me. Um, and thankfully, like, especially now, I'm working in a place with supervisors who really appreciate that honesty from me and that ability to, like, identify my learning style, but it hasn't always been that way, and
I mean, when are we really given an opportunity to figure that out? You know what I mean?
right.
Like, in school, I mean, at least when we were kids, it was I mean, it makes me sound so fucking old, but it's like, this is the way we're doing it, and this is the way
Mhm.
this teacher does it, so this is the way everybody needs to do it because this
Yeah,
teacher
it was
does it this
very
way.
dependent on who your teacher was,
Yeah.
for sure.
So I think, like, I'm still getting to the point where I'm like, "Oh, you know what? This really works really well for me," or, "Oh, this really doesn't."
And I think
Um
that's, like, there's been a huge criticism of Common Core math in the US, and I think one of the benefits of it is that it approaches teaching math in many different ways,
Mhm,
so that if you think of math in one way, maybe you don't understand the traditional way of learning long division, but maybe your brain is processing it this way instead. Because
mhm,
there's a lot of the things on Common Core math where I'm like, "Oh, that's how I do like double digit multiplication. That's how I do it."
mhm.
Even though that's not really how it was taught to me, like, that's how I figured out how to work through the problem because
Right.
that's how my brain works. So
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where I'm like, "Yeah, I'm all for it." Like, they were teaching I know that my mom had to go to, like, the parent teacher nights and learn how they were teaching us math their way or whatever the hell they were doing when I was in 1st grade. So, like, they've been changing how they teach it all along. So, like, I personally have no problem with it, but I do think that there's and I've my last supervisor at my last job made a comment of like, "Oh, well, everybody has ADHD now." So it's like, well, now I know that you're not somebody that I can have a conversation with this about.
Well, and there's that too. Like, I definitely, like, from the other perspective, like, as a supervisor, there was always, I always made sure to be pretty transparent with the people I supervised because I also wanted them in turn to be more transparent with me, not like
Mhm.
transparent, honest.
Yeah.
So, I would be honest, like they would come up and ask me something, and I'd be like, you know what? I'm in the middle of this right now, and my brain is not gonna be able to focus on that. Can you come back and ask me about this after lunch or in a half hour? Can you send me an email with this situation? Just give me a rough thing about what we're talking about or whatever it was. I would do these little things and then in turn made the people that I was supervising comfortable to be like, oh, hey, could we try it this way? Or can you
Mhm.
explain this to me a different way? Or whatever it is. And I think like that in a workplace should not be seen as a sign of weakness. It should be
Right.
like, we're finding the most effective way for us to communicate.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm hopeful that the is turning on that one, but unfortunately, there are still plenty of people who are, I'll say, like, mid 40s and above who don't have the wherewithal to make space for that.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, I'm extremely lucky where I'm working now. Both of my supervisors are in that age bracket and they're both super receptive to any time I've said, I don't know that that's going to work, but it might work this way instead. Or like even one of my bosses asked about like basically doing like a law digest and like breaking down different cases that came out and would I be interested in doing that and da 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 da
Ooh.
da. And I was like, because I had mentioned that I basically did something like that at my last job. And but then the more we talked about it, he was like, "Well, this office like the the legal office for our agency does something like that already." And so I was like, "Well, it might be more beneficial then if I did more of like a breakdown and presentation to the non-attorneys that we work with so that it's not
Ooh.
just here read this case and it's legalese and kind of mumbo jumbo. And if you're new to the position, that may not mean anything to you. If you're not new to the position, it may not mean anything to you. There's plenty of words that I don't know what they mean. Um, so, having it as an actual digest so that you can digest it and
Yeah,
digest the
that's
information and put
interesting.
it
Yeah.
into effect. But it's, being able to work with people who I can have those conversations with.
Mhm.
But also for me, demasking at work, I really wasn't able to do too much of it at my last job because of that comment from my boss.
Mm, yeah.
I didn't feel comfortable doing it. In this position, that same supervisor came to my office and was like, "Hey, I was gonna get water, but then I had a thought, so I had to come talk to you." And I was like, "Yeah, that's how I live my life." And he,
Yeah.
like, got a kick out of it, but I was like, I mean, like, let's be real here. And I know that I've mentioned a few times, like, it's just ADHD and, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just get it done and it is what it is. And, it's what's interesting me and therefore I can get this done really well. Um, so there there is something to be said for, like, working in an office that allows you the room to be honest about who you are and what you're dealing with. Also, right after I started this job, I got a survey, and it was an anonymized survey, but it was like, "Do you have a disability? Do you feel like your needs are being met and that you're given these opportunities?" Like, they fully asked that question. Um, and what we'll talk about next week when we discuss reasonable accommodations in the workplace, um, we'll get more into it. But it was that kind of thing where I was like, okay, like, maybe I should be leading with it. And, if I had
Well, and a new job is like a fresh slate too. It's a
yeah.
clean slate
And
to be able
it is
to
the kind
do
of thing
that.
where it's like if I had hearing loss in one ear or something where I just couldn't hear you if you talk to me on my left side and I'm not looking at you, I don't necessarily like I need to be able to read your lips or
Mhm.
whatever. If but you can't tell that, like you wouldn't know from looking at me that I have hearing loss in one ear or something. It's still something that, like, I deserve the opportunity to do my job. Just because I can't hear well out of one ear doesn't mean that I'm less worthy of doing this job. I just need to make sure that I'm having difficulty with this thing. So, like, um, I do have some tips for,
Oh.
how to help you demask in different areas of your life.
I do feel like when I get home, like, if I'm home, my ADHD is allowed to be.
Mhm.
Like, my ADHD it is feral ADHD territory. It's gonna be wild. I'm not forcing myself to focus. I'm not holding myself to any kind of standard. Um, there's no performance metrics, like, just be the feral kitten. Um, which
I
I think
think
is it I mean, it was more crucial, like, when I was going into work every day, which I'm not at this moment, to give myself, like, that rest time,
mhm.
to, like, kind of reset in between, but then you think about I'm just mystified by people who work, careers, like, say, if you were an artist and you kind of existed in that space all the time, I'm like, "Damn, that's the dream." Feral.
Well, and I think, you know, a lot of, like, work from home, like, 100% of the time or a hybrid work schedule really does help folks with ADHD or people
Mhm,
who are neurodivergent because, yeah, now I can wear stuff that I know I'm comfortable in, and it's not going to make me fidget all day. I don't have to wear a bra. I can sit on the couch and curl up like a shrimp if I want to and do my work and be
mhm.
just as effective, if not more effective in my role, but I'm comfortable. And,
Yeah.
like, so much of masking, I think, is coming from a place of being uncomfortable,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
that that self-awareness of, like, "Oh, I don't fit in here, so, like, I need to make it so that I do fit in." And that might be, like, doodling during a meeting so that, yeah, it looks like I'm taking notes and I look really dedicated and like I'm taking notes, but really I'm just drawing a bunch of circles over and over so that I have something to do with my hands and I can listen because it's
I'm
like
just
just something.
very carefully stacking these circles into a triangle and then another triangle. Yeah, no, it's the doodling, yeah, for sure, and I think, I would find myself there was a lot because I was in a supervisory role, there was a lot of, like, getting quick pulled into something and
Mhm.
then, being assigned a list of tasks. So, I would have I would always have a notepad with me, and my boss would be
Mhm.
like, "You don't need a notepad," and I'm like, "Oh, no, I do. I do need a notepad, though."
Yeah.
And I would make notes, and then before I walked away, I'd be like, "Okay, so just to make sure we're on the same page." And I would read through all of my notes and
Mhm.
reiterate to her like, "Okay, so I need to do this, this, that I need to find out this, and this, and I need to follow up with this one and make sure I'm asking them and point." I mean, it was like it's exhausting just that part
Yeah.
alone, but then also making sure that, like, the rest of the time, like, I'm not talking too much to people and I'm staying on task and I'm getting enough work done and, am I answering things quick enough and am I meeting everyone's expectations and,
Mhm.
did I make a mistake on something? And so I definitely, like, I think would try and get out ahead of things and make self-deprecating comments to kind of cover myself in case there was a mistake.
Yes.
And,
And I think that's probably why a lot of ADHDers are thought of as the class clown.
yeah, yeah,
Like, it's the same with like, they see that a lot in kids with, like, dyslexia or other learning disabilities where, like, or people with undiagnosed, eyesight differences where you can't see the chalkboard, so you're not focusing because 'cause you're like, "Yeah, whatever. I don't know what goes
and
on
you're
up there."
disruptive because 'cause you're
Right.
bored. Yeah,
Exactly. So, like,
yeah.
it's that kind of thing where you instead of it's to avoid being called dumb, basically, because
Mhm,
like, I know I'm not dumb, and it's like we talked about. I know the episode hasn't come out yet, but, like, we talked about in the, Here for a Good Time podcast,
mhm.
with Alicia, like, there's so much about having ADHD and being late diagnosed that is, like, it was such a relief to have the diagnosis because I was like, "Okay, it's not just like, it's not all in my head, like, I don't suck at my job,
Mhm,
like, there's a reason." Like, I don't there's a reason that I missed filling out this form that I fill out every single goddamn day and, have to do all these different things that, like, most people who are doing the form that I was doing have a support staff. Like, they have a secretary or a
right,
paralegal who's
yeah,
helping them with this.
yeah.
I'm doing it all on my own, but it's that feeling of, well, I should be able to do it. And if it was given to me, then I must be able to do this one thing without help. Like,
Mhm,
which again, I think it's so neurodivergent to be like, these you told me everything, which is not almost never the case, but it's that like expectation of like, go do this. And then to like, it doesn't occur to me to ask for help so often because I'm so used to having to figure it out on my own with this
mhm.
expectation of like, well, they told me to do it, so I have to figure out a way to do it. Um, Come hell or high water, really.
Uh, yeah, and like, should, like, I should,
Mhm.
I think that I just think back and I'm like, all these times where I had this concept that I wasn't smart enough for something, like I couldn't hack it. I wasn't a hard enough worker. I
Mhm.
wasn't smart enough. I couldn't do it. So like I really held myself back from a lot of things
Yeah.
because I don't know, it was easier to be good in a middle of the road setting than to really be struggling when no one else is struggling in a tougher setting.
Mhm.
Because really that focus, like I remember having a friend in school and I mean, I think back now and I feel like the amount of homework that we got was like really absurd. um and getting home from school and just being like so tired and so drained and just wanting to like veg, like I didn't want
Mhm.
to do anything, and having to spend the entire nighttime dragging myself through every homework assignment,
Yeah.
and my parents just being like so exasperated because I just like couldn't focus, and having to set timers on things and making sure I was sitting in a way that I couldn't see the TV, and
Yes.
I mean just like a million and one little things. And um it was just I saw a clip floating around online, and it was like all of these sensory things that you can include, like fidgety sensory things for kids
Mhm.
for during the school day, like all these like almost like a reasonable accommodation to be making for a kid. And I'm watching that and I'm like, I would have had a way easier time if, we were breaking up focus periods
Mhm.
if I had something to play with in my hands, or if I, had like a balance thing to be playing with my feet, or I mean there's just like a million and one tools that I think could have been um like a game changer. Like, diagnosis aside, if I had just had those,
Mhm.
because I think the amount of I mean, the masking was definitely learned in school,
Yeah.
looking around and seeing all of these kids that have no problem just sitting and listening.
Right.
And I'm literally like in another galaxy daydreaming about shit that has nothing to do with this.
Mhm.
And really having, and then the teacher thinking, or maybe it's my perception, the teacher thinks that I'm dumb because I can't sit and, pay attention like everybody else can. And it's just like, it is crazy to think the number of times that I have done that, and that masking has come up, or in conversation with people, and you kind of have to play it off like, "Oh yeah, that was woo. I was doing the same thing everybody for sure. Oh yeah, you guys were doing that. I was doing the same thing. Yep." Like,
Oh, for
just
sure,
trying to
and I
like
mean,
fly under the radar.
there's also, like, a very human element, like, I mean, I think humans naturally, like, in our lizard brain, like, we wanna fit in,
Mhm.
and it's that thing, as children, I am realizing I'm different and I don't have that same reaction to things, or I'm thinking of something in a different way, but the teacher says it's time to move on from this topic. So, like, yeah, no, I totally understand, I guess. And, kind of like fake it till you make it. And yeah, obviously I have a doctorate. Like I went through school and I was successful, but it's the sort of thing where it's so irritating to look back and be like, wow, what could I have done if I had just had a diagnosis and medication? Like,
Yeah.
I would have been so fucking unstoppable. And it's very frustrating, and it can become um a really depressing thing to think about. Like, you can't it's hard to not dwell in the like woulda coulda shoulda
Mhm.
of it all, but I think working on demasking, especially at work or at school, where your productivity is what is your worth or your value is
Mhm.
measured on, um, I think is important. So, um, the first step in trying to demask, according to this one article I found, was trying to identify when and why you mask your symptoms. So, is it just in certain groups of people that you're really masking? Is it when you're feeling uncomfortable in a very specific way? Um, and
Yes.
consider yeah, like
Both.
right. And but kind of sit and figure out, or like talk with your therapist and figure out like what about those situations is like specifically making you uncomfortable enough that you're like, yeah, I can't doodle. So I have to figure out a different way to sit through this meeting because of whatever reason. I feel uncomfortable because maybe it's someone like my old boss made a comment of everybody has ADHD, or maybe a current coworker makes a comment about Ozempic.
Mhm.
And so now I'm like, well, now I can't talk about that because you're not a
Everybody
safe
hates me.
person anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't want to rock the boat because it is work and or school, and you don't want to quote unquote create problems. But, at the same time, you have to like make that decision of, is it that I don't want to rock the boat? So I'm going to, dim my shine so that somebody else doesn't feel uncomfortable knowing that what they said actually hurt me. Um,
Mm.
but so the first step is to figure out when you're masking and why you might be masking in those situations. Um, so the second step, They recommend exploring alternatives for unhealthy masking behavior. So, if loud parties and large gatherings drain you, make it a point to leave the event earlier or wear earplugs. Um, like we love loops. I wear
Mhm.
my loops at work all the time, even though I'm in an office, like with a door. I'll put my loops in because it's almost like that thing. I know you were talking about it, I think in our focus episode, like way back in the beginning, but
Mhm.
like you get your drink, you put on your glasses, you have like your blanket, you have like this whole
Yep.
ritual that you go through.
Notepad, pad yeah.
Yeah.
Pen,
So
like
like part of my focusing
mhm.
ritual is like putting in my headphones so that it is
Yep.
very quiet, and it kind of like just helps me pay attention. And then also when somebody comes up to my desk and tries to talk to me, I have to take out the headphone or the earplug, which is also a little bit of a sign to them that like, "Hey, you are interrupting me."
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's a good one.
but again, like instead of suppressing all of your emotions, that's I think if you're struggling with that one, that's definitely one to talk to your therapist about, like how to make sure that your physical and mental and emotional needs are being met, even if like, because you can't always tell your boss to go fuck themselves. As much as we tell people that on this podcast,
We do.
you shouldn't probably.
Sometimes that's just something that, like, when, you're, like, taking a shower and you're, like, recounting your day and you're like, "Yeah, well, fuck you, no, fuck you."
Fuck you, Harvard.
Sometimes yeah, "Eat a dick, blow me." Sometimes that's just a conversation you have to have in the car on the way home or in the shower when you're recounting your day
Yeah.
instead of to everybody's face. And I mean, I think it, not to like try and turn it into like you have to be nice about things, but like you do attract more flies with honey than vinegar, right? So sometimes it is about like making something digestible for someone else to try and get them to be. I know I've dealt with people where it's like I almost have to go through my thought process out loud about how I'm being like empathetic to a situation to get them to also try and be empathetic.
Mhm.
They'll mention something and they're like, "Oh, this person's doing X, Y, and Z." I'm like, "Wow, that must be really hard for them when they have all of these things going on. Like, that's very stressful, or they must be very anxious, or, this." So sometimes I feel like when you are honest and verbal about those things, even if you're doing it like in the third person or you're talking about
Mhm.
a stranger or a news story, whatever it is, keeping it like, you know, in a way that they can easily take it, pick it up,
Yeah.
and, like, then they can digest it themselves, um, and not that it's about, like, making yourself digestible and easy for other people, but sometimes, like, in a work setting or in a professional setting, sometimes you kind of have to, so
Mhm.
sometimes you do have to spoon feed that to other people.
Which goes into the next, suggestion about talking to people about your ADHD
Mhm,
challenges. So this list recommended informing your closest friends and family members about your struggles with ADHD and then gradually moving on to other relationships. But I think that spoon feeding thing, I think also works with employers, with bosses and colleagues to
mhm,
say like, you know, like you know, and just I mean, I've had situations with people where I've said, "Look, I have ADHD, so it's feeling like you're moving the goalpost, which makes it hard for me to anticipate what you need from me the next time we talk." And so because of that, when I need you to be clear about what your goal is for this project, or, you know, if you want certain benchmarks to be met, that's fine, but you have to explicitly tell me what those benchmarks are so that I can
yeah,
meet them, and I have no problem meeting them, but I'm not good at guessing what you want next. Um, and I think especially now, like so many of the people that I work with on a daily basis are not in my office, so I'm not seeing them personally face to face. Sometimes it's on a Zoom call, but sometimes it's just a regular call or an
mhm,
email. So, it's it's kind of saying like I need you to be better at how you're communicating what you need to me. And that is an intimidating conversation. Like
oh, yeah, yeah,
like but I do think that it's also a very professional conversation. And
yeah,
when you're coming at it from a very calm point of view to say, like, I just want to make sure that you're understanding me and what I need from you in order to be successful on this project can be a way to approach that without it sounding like blaming.
Mhm.
Because I think, especially with um, really any supervisor, but like the moment anybody feels like they're being personally attacked, it's like a non-starter for the conversation
Yes.
because they're not going to be responding to anything you say. They're just going to be defending themselves at that point.
It's like the wall comes down and then you can't make progress.
Right.
That's why I am using the term spoon feeding,
Mhm.
because sometimes it really is like, and again, I do have a tendency to be self-deprecating when it comes to things like this, but there's definitely been times where I've been like, "Woo, ADHD is kicking today. I did not get enough sleep. So can we just need to like slow this down a little bit." So
Mhm.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So we need to do this first, then we need to and I mean sometimes that's really I will interrupt a meeting
Mhm.
like that. Because you know, usually you're not the only person who's having that issue too.
Yeah.
How many people are undiagnosed, unaware, have no clue,
Mhm.
and are just like existing with these symptoms? So, I know like I had gotten feedback from people I supervised that were like, "Ooh, I'm really glad that, you slowed this down or you rewound and we covered this." I also am very big, like, I don't have a great, I think part of it's definitely an ADHD thing. Like, I don't have a great memory when
Mhm.
it comes to things. So, like, I need to have stuff available for reference that's
Mhm.
easily findable. So, like, we had talked about OneNote before. Like, I had made this big OneNote document that was just like easily accessible for people. You can search something, everything was organized, color coded, whatever else. Because like having to remember and retain information like that. And
Yeah.
another thing I've had to do is like, I had somebody try and train me in something. And I was like, when is the next time I'm going to need to do this? Oh, well, not for like another couple of months. I was like, I need to table this. We can go over this in a couple of months when it comes up again, because if you show me right now, I'm not going to remember. And I'm going to be asking you to show me again. So I'm wasting your time right now if you're showing me how to do this right now.
Totally. And that was actually a big critique of some of the training that I've been doing at my new job because we got the phrase is put a pin in it. And we were told that so many times that it was really frustrating a lot of my colleagues. And for me, that was fine because I was like, yeah, then I'm not spending my brain on it right
Yeah.
now because I'm not going to need it. Um, there's been a little bit of an issue on actually circling back and picking that pin up and running with it at this
Which I'm
point.
also guilty of.
But, it's also, I think, again, it's that thing where I'm like, I have no problem asking somebody to explain something to me. And I think it is a bit of an age thing where I'm like, yeah, if you want to think I'm stupid, that's fine. I don't really care at this point. I want to make sure that I'm doing this correctly. And which is probably also part of me really demasking and being fine with however that might be perceived.
That's a good point too. I feel like as I've gotten older, I'm much more likely to ask questions
Mhm,
and to
for sure.
interrupt and make sure that I'm on the same page. Whereas I think when I was younger, I'd be, no, I don't have any questions. I totally understand what you said because I'm very smart and
Mhm.
very capable, and I would never not understand you the first time.
Yeah.
And walk away with something and be like, "Fuck, I don't know
Mhm.
what I'm gonna do."
And I also find that I don't do well with people who are trying to train me, but it seems like I'm eating into their time
Oh, if
when
I feel rushed,
especially if like I didn't so I had a situation recently where I was like paired up with them. I was supposed to watch them in some hearings and then they were going to observe me and basically like sign off that I'm not like a total moron and can do this work.
mhm,
And so I was reviewing the cases that they were going to shadow me on, and they told me like I had prepped the case. So I was like, this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I'm going to say. Da, 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 da. This is my goal for the hearing, whatever. And they rattled off like some stuff and I'm like trying to take notes, but like follow what I said because he was like, they were like, "Yeah, you're right," and da 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 da, and then like shot through a bunch of shit. And I was like, hold on, what you said doesn't make sense because like I'm fully not understanding how we went from point A to point Z here. And so then they were like, "Well, I mean, yeah, I want you to understand, so like ask the questions." And I was like, "Right, but it was the sort of thing where I was like in my head, I was like, "Yeah, but the way you just rushed through all that information is making me feel like," especially because some of it was restating what I had already said. So it wasn't like I was fully wrong, but it was almost like they needed me to to accept their opinion as the only opinion and move on. And it was just a very weird experience, but it felt so rushed that I was like, "Am I keeping you from something? Like I did not ask you to spend time with me on doing
Right.
this." So like you're a supervisor. You were told by your supervisor to do this. It's taking maybe 2 hours of time. Like cool it kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was just that sort of thing where I was like I left that Zoom meeting and I was like, that sucked.
Oh, I'm always
Like
I would always try and, like, kind of center myself a little bit before because I did have I also took over, a supervisory role, and there was just, like, a lot happening, so I
Mhm,
think, it's hard. I mean, I'm not a good trainer. I'm, like, okay, I just don't love it,
mhm,
um, and I think some of it is, like, a ADHD, like, boredom thing, like,
mm,
I think there's also a lot of things that, like, I may know how to do, but, being able to explain it
mhm.
is a different thing because some of it is just like a gut, which is, like, not great to train. But I definitely would try and make sure that somebody felt like I was accessible and they could follow up with me and they could ask me questions. And I saw this thing and it was a headline about millennials being momagers instead of managers, where they were just as concerned about their employees' like well-being as they were about like their ability to do the work. And I was like, "Oh, I am 100% guilty of that," making sure everyone is like comfortable and at ease and they're not stressed out and they understand things and will take it
Was
one
that
step at a time.
was that statement made as a negative?
I don't know, I think it was just more of like an observation. I mean, I'm sure if I read the whole article,
My
how
radiator
ADHD
is
is this.
popping right now. You hear that?
Yeah, I do. That's your radiator.
Yeah.
Damn.
I don't know
It must
what
be
the
chilly
problem is.
outside.
Someone's trying to get out, I think. They're stuck in the radiator.
Cole's like, "Yeah, you had all these comments made about how I was on one, now I'm trapped in the radiator."
It's just Slimer from Ghostbusters.
Just gonna appear behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wow, I guess I didn't realize the extent to which, um, I was masking, or I do mask.
Same. And so I know that I talked about it on one of our Patreon extended cut episodes, but I had gotten that chair, that crisscross chair from TikTok where you can like sit cross-legged.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for it. It's still in my office at work. It was more that the cushioning on it wasn't that great. And I also couldn't sit cross-legged on it. I don't know if I just don't have good like hip mobility, which is very plausible. I don't stretch very often. Um, so I don't know if I'm just lacking the hip mobility that like young influencers have. Um, but yeah, it just didn't work for me. But what does work for me is having a step stool that I can fuck around under my desk with and
Mhm.
basically still curl up like a shrimp, but like get comfortable in my chair and like have these things available to me so that I can sit comfortably and do my work. And, you know, I have a desk lamp on my desk at work. So if I'm not in hearings, I turn off my overhead light and I just have my desk lamp and my Christmas lights and my hustle neon sign on. And I work that way in my office. And It doesn't always work, but, like, on f this past Friday, I had it on and, one of our paralegals walked by and was like, "Oh, you like to work in the dark too?" And my office doesn't have a window, working on getting an office with a window, but for now, I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't always work," like, in the winter, especially when it was, like, really dark out, and the whole office was really dark as a result, it didn't work because it was too dark.
Mm.
But on Friday, like, it hit just right, it felt like just the right amount of cozy, and I was, like, really getting the work done that I needed to get done.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's definitely not any lights going on over here
Garrett has a lava lamp and a neon sign
and
and
2
twinkly
different kinds
lights.
of string lights
Yeah.
and a lamp.
Yeah. If you're not on, Patreon watching the video feed,
I
but,
hate overhead lighting. I hate it. And, I think that's some of it too, like, the conditions working conditions in an office are the opposite of what I like myself.
Mhm.
The lighting is really harsh and it's generally, like, pretty noisy, and there's a lot of distractions, and, you've got these open desks, so people are, like, coming up to you, and it also makes you, like, accessible all the time. Um, and as far as, like, ADHD goes, like, that's not great.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, honestly, I would be so just, like, beside myself in happiness if I could have, like, a lazy boy lounger as my work chair,
yeah,
because then I could sit crisscrossed or have my feet up and, like, still have my desk, like, be able to type and do whatever I needed to do.
yeah.
Like, that would be ideal, and I
I
don't.
mean, I had a lap desk and my laptop, and I
Mhm.
would forego working on 2 screens because we do have a 2-screen setup at home. I would forego that so that I could sit someplace more comfortable.
You should get that,
Um,
like, extension monitor thing that they have for
I
laptops. Have
was
you
thinking
seen
about
that?
that. Yeah, I might do that for, when I'm back to working from home, but,
Mm.
and I do think, like, for me, like, a hybrid schedule was the most effective. There
Mhm.
was enough variation, and it made me get out of the house, but I was also able to, like, do the cozy little baby thing and be home and not have to have all the hustle and bustle, and I think, like, during COVID, that was a real realization. Seeing immediately the amount of time that I was saving not getting up, getting dressed, getting food together, whatever else, getting my stuff together, driving to work, walking into work, getting settled in, and then doing that whole backwards at the end of the day and schlepping all the
Mhm.
way home and unpacking and prepping for the next day. And I was like, wow, the amount of time and effort that goes into this, like,
Because you have to set all those alarms when you're doing all
yeah,
those things to, like,
right.
do that. Yeah.
And
No, I
keep
was.
myself on task, like,
Mhm.
constantly, like, policing myself every morning, and that sucks, like, nobody wants to live
Yes.
that way, and I also had a situation where it was pretty strict about what time you showed up.
Mhm.
So, if I was 5 minutes late, I was either charging 5 minutes or,
Idiotic.
whatever else, so, I didn't have there was no flexibility,
Mhm.
and I feel like with ADHD, I need extra flexibility.
Well, and it's that
Um
sort of thing where, I think for whatever reason, and I don't know why or how it started, but ADHD in particular, it seems like we have the to bear the brunt of you're just gonna take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm taking advantage of it because I know that I'm supposed to be at work at 7:30 every day. But if one day, you know, the shit hits the fan in the morning, the dog gets out of the backyard and I've got to chase them down, or I got into the shower late because of whatever reason, the I had to do laundry or I had to do the dishes. And my shirt, I spilled coffee on my work shirt so that I had to change my whole outfit. Those little things that make it so that then I'm going into work at 8 instead of 7:30, like, having the ability to do that without having to say to my boss why,
Because
and it
then you
not
feel like
being a
a
thing.
failure.
Exactly. And, it's even like I said, I'm working on getting an office with a window. So my supervisor changed, we got moved into this new unit, and my new supervisor, my old supervisor is in my office physically with me, so I had FaceTime with this person. My new supervisor is in a different office and in a different part of the state, and so I just had less FaceTime with them. And so there was an announcement made that one of the attorneys in my office was leaving to go to a different state agency. And a, another attorney from my office, after I joined this agency, stayed within our agency but was moving to a different office location. So their office was also vacant. So now we're going to have 2 vacant offices. So I sent the email to my new supervisor and I was like, hey, old supervisor was working on getting me the office with the window. Now that another person is leaving and there's going to be 2 vacancies, do you think I could have that one? But to hype myself up to even ask that question,
I would
because
have
I
a
didn't
really
want to
hard time.
feel, oh my God, it was like,
Yeah.
it took me like a full day to
Yeah.
like talk myself into it. And it was very much like I'm just going to send the email and not think about it.
Yeah.
Like, I just have
And
to
then
get
you're
it
like
out. Like,
until
truly.
you get
And
a
to her credit, like, she didn't respond, and I in the email, I was like, "Look, I know you have a ton on your plate. This is obviously a back burner issue, but I was just wondering if I could get out of the storage closet and into an actual office with a
Yeah.
window." And, if the answer is no, cool, whatever. Um, so she didn't answer me right away. We had emailed about actual work things in between. And then she calls me on Teams and was like, hey, I didn't want to put it in writing, but like, this is the status of that request. And so she at least like followed up with me. She was like, there's no definitive answer. So that's why I didn't want to put it in writing just in case, like, blah, 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 which like, we're all lawyers. I understand. But it was the kind of thing where I was like, thank you for communicating that with me,
Yeah.
because it was that sort of thing where I was like, man, now this lady hates me. Like,
Literally, anytime I ask for any kind of condition to be met, I'm like, "Well, now they hate me."
yeah. Oh, it's so it's exhausting.
Can I tell you an unrelated stupid thing that I realized the other day?
Yeah, I have nothing else. The last 2 tips were,
Oh,
ADHD support groups like this podcast,
yeah.
and seek professional treatment and support. So
It's like also
medication
diet
and
and exercise,
therapy.
bitch.
Yeah. And next week we're going to talk about reasonable accommodations at work. So,
I'm looking forward to that. I definitely
yeah.
am looking forward to that conversation. Like, I, um I was at the store. So I had this thing, if I take the baby someplace, getting in and out of the car is difficult because I've got this other person to navigate. So
Mhm.
if I'm either clicking her car seat into the stroller or if I have to pick her up and put her in a carrier, whatever it is, I really don't want to have somebody on the other side of my car because I have to open the
Right.
door wide. And it never fucking fails that I park far away from everybody and then somebody comes and parks 2 inches from my car, and I've literally had to, like, get back in and move my car because people are too close. Which, like, whatever, like, I don't expect everybody to be, like, aware of everything all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like,
It's so frustrating.
it's very creepy man behavior,
It's
right?
usually a man,
Yeah.
to be fair. Um, I am at the store the other day, and I turn on my way in, and I realize that there are, like, parent with infant parking.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you
right
think
next to the
ever
cart.
one time in the last year? I mean, really, because you can use it when you're pregnant too, like super pregnant. Do you think I've ever used that? Nope, completely fucking forgot it existed. So how's my ADHD working for me? I forgot that infant parents with infants was a thing. Like that parking was a thing, and I've never taken advantage of it. And again, then in my head I'm like, am I bad for using this parking? Should I give it to somebody else?
Mhm.
So this
It's
is the
that
thing
thing
we
of
do to
other
ourselves.
people have it worse, therefore I shouldn't be doing this.
Yes.
My situation isn't as bad as it could be.
Yes.
Um, whatever.
Which means I
However
can't
we
use things that are available to me,
right.
like or leaving the hospital on foot instead of using a wheelchair. It was just like one of those
Not asking for pain medication.
not asking for pain medication. "How are you feeling?" "I'm in a lot of pain."
Like a bus hit me and then licked my nipples off. How do you have medicine for that?
It's just so funny, like, how I mean, I think there's a lot of dynamics, but, the ADHD, like, you just forget that certain things exist.
Yes, constantly.
I forgot those parking spots existed, and here I am, like, cussing people under my breath. I'm like, "These motherfuckers, I'm just trying to get out of my fucking car." And I did, almost yell at a teen recently.
Hmm.
I was standing by my car with a stroller with a human in it, and he, while vaping and on his phone, whipped into the spot next to me, and I was standing at the back of my car and had to stop myself from screaming at this teen.
Oh, I woulda yelled.
I almost did.
A
But see,
box truck almost
now
took me out the other day, so yeah,
I
I
do
woulda
that
yelled.
thing where now I almost gaslight myself out of saying things all the time because I'm like, "No, it's not that big a deal," or, "You're being you this is emotional dysregulation. You're getting too mad about something that you shouldn't be this mad about." So eventually I will
Yeah.
find the happy medium and know when it's appropriate to yell about something, which I'm sure neurotypical people probably have a concept of that, but I, will
Not me.
I will
I mean, I
overthink
feel
it.
like I learn whatever the boundary is after I react to it, and then I'm like, "Okay, so maybe that was too much."
Yeah, yeah. I'm always afraid it's too much.
Fair.
So then I, talk myself out of ever saying anything. And if I do say something, then I can't be nice about it. So
Mm.
one day, a balance will be struck and I'll know how to behave like a normal person.
And then the next day you'll die.
Yes, that's exactly how it'll go. I will literally figure it out and then croak.
Probably. I
Yeah,
mean,
because the bar's not gonna because the bar's not gonna lie. But no, that's
um,
that's really fascinating. I'm really gonna be chewing on this a lot
yeah.
the next few days.
No, it really I mean, it really does affect so many things, like, consider I have been, as our Patreon members know, I have been hyper focusing almost to my own detriment over how to pack and the logistics of this trip to Europe that we're taking. And I have been obsessing about it to the point when I had my annual physical last week, I like mentioned to my doctor that I probably need to increase my anxiety medication because it's not normal how much I'm worried about something happening 5.5 months from now. Um, and granted, I was on 5 milligrams of Lexapro. Now I'm on 10. So like, yeah.
Looks like Katie failed the anxiety test.
But it was the kind of thing where I was like, no, like, and I had this whole thing with this fucking suitcase dimensions
Mhm.
question. And, PK, like, once I kind of like settled, PK was like, yeah, I think you were overreacting a bit. And I was like, yeah, probably. But
You know what? I was mad
I'm
as hell about
so,
it.
I was so concerned, and I still am to an extent of like making sure that like going through security, I'm good. And like the bag fits and it's not like against the rules because, you
You know
know,
how you are with rules.
but it's a masking thing, because I know at
Mhm.
least I can say, "Look, I followed the rules, like, I did my part, and you told me this, and these are the rules I followed, I'm not wrong." So then, like, it's a way to kind of, like, navigate the world so that I don't have to feel shame.
So no one will notice that
Yes.
I don't know what I'm doing, or I know, like, my thing is always I wanna feel like I'm prepared because when I get into the situation, if I get flustered, my brain stops working. Like, I get overwhelmed, I get flustered, and it's like I absolutely cannot think.
Mhm.
I can do
For
okay,
sure.
like, in an emergency situation, like, I can, like, hyper focus,
Mhm.
but in a situation like that where I'm, like, flustered and I feel clumsy and sloppy and embarrassed and messy, like, those and that, like, red face, like, shame almost feeling,
Mhm.
my
Yes.
brain won't work, like, 100% will not work, and it's
Exactly.
also
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
hot, and as we know, hot is one of the things hot, tired, hungry that makes you the worst version of yourself, and
Truly.
It's yeah, I mean, I completely understand it. I completely see where it's coming from. I know, like, when we went on our honeymoon, it was my first transatlantic flight. We went to Ireland, and I had to go to my doctor and asked for, like, enough Xanax to get me on the flight and get me on the flight home, and she literally wrote me a prescription for, like, 3 Xanax.
Mhm,
Because I said to her, I was like, "This trip is 2 weeks away, and I'm losing sleep because I
mhm,
keep thinking about this flight." I was
yes.
like, "So I just need something to, like, take the edge off, like, a little bit." And it was, like, literally just enough to, "Okay, now I'm
Yes,
good."
and since upping my dose of Lexapro, I have felt much better.
Well,
So,
that's good.
yeah,
Maybe you were just due for, like, a tune-up for that.
maybe.
I mean, it
It's
happens.
very likely. But, there's also that aspect of things, like, I don't wanna stand out for a bad reason. I don't wanna stand out because I look like I don't know what I'm doing or, like, I'm the asshole in the airport who doesn't move their shit off the conveyor belt fast enough or whatever the hell people complain about.
And
So
what
it's
a
all
sh
those.
and it there's no good system for it. It's a shit show.
Yes.
Like, you get to the other end of security and you went through the rinse cycle, somebody just, like, pulled you out of the washing machine, like, you're all askew. I mean, your
Mhm.
shit's a mess, your shoes are off, you don't have a belt on, you're like,
Oh, for sure,
I
and
don't
I
even know
also
what's
don't wanna,
happening."
like, be uncomfortable on the plane for a 7-hour flight
Mhm.
and, have my seams digging into me or I'm too cold or I'm too hot or my hair's pulling or whatever, those things.
I
So.
think what's I always thought what was perfect was, like, I would get merino wool, like, lightweight socks,
Mhm,
and I would usually wear, like, Allbirds or something that was, like, super comfy on my feet, and Quince makes these really nice leggings, and I would wear those super soft, buttery leggings with, like, a loose t-shirt, and then I would usually have, like a sweater and a scarf, so that way I had, like, layers and
yeah,
everything
I
was
have
super
my whole
breezy and
outfit
comfy.
figured out, because of course I do.
Yeah,
I
I was just gonna
anxiety
say that.
spiraled.
Yep. Well,
Um,
this will definitely be one that we wind up bringing up in the future because I'm amazed how attacked I feel.
yeah,
I turns out I do it a lot.
mhm.
I still do it a lot. I do it less, but I
I
still do it
definitely
a
do it
lot.
less, but I do think and I think part of it is also, how it's not necessarily like you can call it masking, but it's really just, how I cope with having ADHD. I live in a world that is for neurotypical people. So there is an aspect of living in this world that is about figuring out how to make it work for me. And part of that comes with accommodating my ADHD, but also making the world accommodate my ADHD. And sometimes that involves these absolutely excessive workarounds that I have to do.
Well, and I mean, it's not like flexibility is not gonna hurt anybody, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, being a little bit more flexible and having this attitude of like, "Well, if the work's getting done, then I mean, you know,
Right. Oh, yeah, that's been my policy this whole time. If my work's getting done,
who's"
eat a bag of
right.
shit.
Who cares? But I think I think the whatever masking we're doing, it's an extra thick mask because I mean, how long did we not even really know what was up?
Mhm. Oh,
I mean,
for
like, I
sure.
remember finding out I had ADHD. It was ADD at the time, and the therapist being like, "Yeah, no, that's, like, for sure what's going on." And we were on, like, a bike ride or something, and I'm just, like, talking to my spouse, I was like, "And then this, and then this, and then this." So you think about, like, all that time that you're doing that, and you don't even realize that you're doing it. It's like a total subconscious thing.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling when you kind of, like, zoom out and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
the whole time?
Yes,
I was
exactly.
doing this the
Exactly.
whole time?"
And I think, the point earlier that, masking can lead to missing a diagnosis for ADHD, but also for a lot of other things
Yeah.
that um the doing the work to demask is important and worth exploring. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to. I don't care.
No, but I mean,
Um,
if you're putting something in terms of, "Oh, are you struggling with this?" If you're, like, not there and you don't want to admit you're struggling with
right,
something, then, yeah, my symptoms are you're not gonna get an accurate view of my symptoms because I'm covering them up.
exactly.
Yeah, I think that, no, for sure, um, I'd be interested not that this is, like, really something that they could be measuring, but, how much less masking happens as you get older.
Mhm,
Um, and a lot of it I mean, I think some of it is probably fatigue and burnout, but I think a lot of it is also just, like, you a big part of this podcast is, we're finding out ways that, like, we can have our ADHD, we're not fighting it, we're working with it instead of against it.
mhm.
I'm capable of getting things done. I just have to make sure, like, I have the right conditions.
Yeah,
Or when we were talking about how it's not that you don't have an attention span, it's that you have, like, a variable attention span.
yes,
You can focus, you just can't regulate your focus. Um,
yes.
so it's totally, it just comes down to, like, finding what works. If masking is what's getting you through a job until you can find something else, or it's what's getting you through school until you can finish your degree, or whatever is happening,
Mhm.
if it's making it where, you can fit in with your peers a little bit better, I mean, if it's a band-aid, if it's working for you, whatever. You're right. Whatever works for you, but I know for me, it's exhausting.
Right. Yeah,
It's
no,
an
it is, and
exhausting
it's
plate spinning.
that kind of, like I said, in the beginning, it's when I'm getting burnt out that I have to say, like, "Okay, what am I trying to" I have to, dance it out and let myself be weird and, you know, kinda do the factory reset, kind of.
Yes. You gotta get the weird out. I tell the baby that all the time. Sometimes she has to get the weird out.
And then she
Because
shits
if
all over her pants, but
she shits all over everything. Everything gets poop on it.
poop
Um,
acre.
um, that's really interesting. I'm gonna be thinking about this a lot. I'm gonna be chewing on
Enjoy.
this one a lot. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about that Jim Carrey movie, The Mask. I love that movie.
I haven't watched that in a billion million years.
Oh, no, I also haven't watched it in a really long time, but for
That's what we
whatever
should
reason
watch
growing up,
instead
I
of
love
Oppenheimer next time.
that movie was so
It was so long. We tried to watch Oppenheimer, guys, or Oppenheimer, whatever. It was very long. I got way too drunk by accident. Missed a lot of it as a result. Uh, but also that movie is so long and not about what I thought it was going to be about. I don't know.
it was very long. Um, it just it just wasn't for me. There's
Yeah.
just I can handle a long movie if you're keeping my attention. I
And
think I
there was
spent the
no
whole
Killian
movie
Murphy dong.
Okay, so I was gonna say, I spent the whole movie being like, "When am I gonna see Cillian Murphy's dong?" Because I heard that there was dong in it, and while I was glad that Florence Pugh's boobs were in it, I was also like, "Where is Cillian Murphy's
Yeah, I
dong?"
was
Because
told
I
he
was
was
told
hanging
there would
brain
be
in 2
dong.
different ways,
Yeah,
and yeah.
and we didn't get it. So, I guess Christopher Nolan, we're calling you out, and I wanna know
Is it
where the
gonna be
dong
like the
was.
Zack Snyder cut where we
I wanna know where it was. Where was it? I didn't see it.
get
And I feel like it has to be sizable. So,
Oh, I
um,
would think so.
yeah, maybe we should watch The Mask. That'd be a fun one. Um, no, that's all I got.
Okay. So make sure you're following us on Instagram and Threads at the bar is ankle high. We're on TikTok at ankle high pod. Join our Patreon for just $5 a month at patreon.com/slash the bar is ankle high. You will get added to our close friends list on Instagram. You get extended cut episodes, you get
Video
video
episodes,
episodes, and we
extra
have
episodes.
bonus episodes. Um, and you get a shout out and all that fun stuff. We have merch at bit.ly/ankle merch. Thank you to everyone who has ordered their own unpaid intern
Oh
merch.
god, I gotta order mine.
I
I haven't ordered mine yet.
hope you all are enjoying your I can do all things through my unpaid intern who edits me mugs. Um, and yeah, until next week. Take off your mask if you want to.
Mm. I was thinking about in The Mask, I feel like there was a line, it was like, was it "Somebody stop me"?
Yeah.
So, I think it was a show I was watching where they misquoted it and they said, "Somebody suck me," and I almost just blurted that out, and I was like, "I know that that's not right. I cannot blurt
God,
out
I
at the
wish
end
you
of this
hadn't stopped
episode, 'Somebody
yourself.
suck
I
me.'"
wish you had taken your mask off for that.
"Somebody suck me," 'cause the bars ain't lie. Oh god.
Oh man. Well, we'll see you next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.